We begin my top 24 tight end rankings with tight ends that I think are low end tight end twos this week. We have Mike Gesicki, Tyler Conklin, and Kyle Pitts. So Mike Gesicki is coming off a 5-target game with Tee Higgins playing, so that is encouraging. His involvement, though, when Tee Higgins plays is drastically reduced compared to the splits when he doesn't play. And so, given how many tight ends are on bye this week, I do think he's a back end tight end too. He always has the upside, but the volume probably isn't going to be immense this week. Now we have Tyler Conklin. After 3 straight weeks of 2 targets, he had 5 this past week. Miami's definitely a matchup that he can exploit. I do think he sees a couple grabs in this game, but I'm not projecting a touchdown. Have you seen Kyle Pitts? After an incredibly slow start to the season, he had a massive 4-week run, but has since returned to irrelevancy. He only saw 2 targets this past week, failed to record a reception. It's quite concerning. I do think he gets a couple grabs in this game, but I'm not projecting a touchdown, and it's just really discouraging, and he's a very risky start right now. Now we have tight ends that I think are probably low end to mid tight end twos. We have Noah Fant, Dawson Knox, JT Sanders, Cole Kmet, and Pat Freiermuth. So Noah Fant, in the last 3 weeks in which he's played, has seen 4 targets apiece. I think that continues here against Arizona. I think he gets a couple grabs, but I'm not projecting a touchdown. Dawson Knox, in the absence of Dalton Kincaid, didn't have a massive week this past week, but I think that was really due to the weather. Both teams were trying really hard to run the ball as much as they could. The Rams are definitely a matchup that he can exploit. They are very poor in terms of they allow a lot of tight end production per week. I do think that Dalton Kincaid misses this game again, and so I think he gets a couple grabs, but nothing special, and I don't think he scores a touchdown. JT Sanders has been a little bit streaky this year, but we've all been spoiled by Kyle Pitts, Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid, and especially Brock Bowers recently. For a rookie tight end to have flashes is very encouraging. He played 18% of the snaps this past week, but had 49 receiving yards on 3 grabs. I do think he ends up playing in this game, which is a miracle. It is a tough matchup against Philadelphia, but I do think that Bryce Young is going to look to get the ball out of his hands quickly, and I think that JT Sanders is going to get a couple grabs. A week after having 10 targets, Cole Kmet only had 3 this past week. Very discouraging. I do think he's involved a little bit more, though, even though San Francisco does allow the 3rd fewest points to tight ends. He's a very risky start, but he's a good player, and if he does get the volume like I think he will, he's a decent bet if your starting tight end is either on bye or hurt. Apparently, Pat Freiermuth exists. The Steelers haven't realized this basically the entirety of the season. This matchup against Cleveland is definitely exploitable. He saw 7 targets this past week and did score a touchdown. I don't think he scores a touchdown, but I do think he continues to be involved. Now we have tight ends that I think are mid to high end tight end twos this week. We have Grant Calcaterra, Noah Gray, Will Dissly, and Sam Laporta. So in the absence of Dallas Goedert earlier in the year, Calcaterra had 3, 4, and 5 targets. Carolina's defense does allow the most points to tight ends in fantasy. I think he gets a couple grabs in this game. I don't think he scores a touchdown, but he definitely has a ton of upside in this game. After having 2 weeks of 2 touchdowns in a row, Noah Gray had 6 targets this past week. It's really encouraging to see the tight end 2 in Kansas City getting a lot of involvement. I think he scores another touchdown in this game, but otherwise has a limited day, but he is a very high upside play, albeit very risky at the same time. After being heavily involved for a couple weeks, Will Dissly only had 1 target and finished with no reception this past week. Very discouraging, but Kansas City is a matchup that he should be able to exploit. The game script should necessitate quite a bit of passing on the Chargers' end, and so I do think he's a high upside play, but very risky at the same time. Sam Laporta has seen at least 6 targets in 4 of the past 5 weeks. That is very encouraging. He's also scored a couple of touchdowns in this time span. I don't think he scores a touchdown, but I do think he sees the same amount of involvement and finishes with a couple grabs for a decent amount of yardage. If you like what you're seeing and hearing so far, feel free to like and subscribe. It's a free and easy way to support the channel. And make sure you check out my quarterback, wide receiver, and running back rankings as they come out. Quarterback and tight end rankings are coming out today, being Thursday, and running back and wide receivers are coming out on Friday. Thanks. Now we have tight ends that I think are mid to low end tight end ones. You have Tucker Kraft, Juwan Johnson, Cade Otton, Luke Schoonmaker, TJ Hawkinson, Evan Ingram, and David Njoku. So Tucker Kraft has been very, very wishy-washy. He's coming off a decent game this past week. I do think he sees some involvement in this game, and I do think he scores a touchdown, even though he's playing Detroit, who do allow the fewest points to tight ends in fantasy. Now we have Juwan Johnson. He's matched up against the New York Giants, who allow the second fewest points to tight ends. I do think, though, that with Chris Olave being out, them starting practice squad wide receivers, and with Taysom Hill also being out, he does see some increased involvement. I think he has a decent amount of yardage and a couple of receptions with no touchdown. Cade Otton has been significantly hindered by the return of Mike Evans, but he still should have had much better games than he did the past couple of weeks. I do think he scores a touchdown, making him a low-end tight end 1 type this week. In the absence of Jake Ferguson, Luke Schoonmaker has seen 10, 4, and 6 targets in the past 3 games. I think that Ferguson misses this game as well, and Cincinnati allows the 3rd most points to tight ends, and so I think this is absolutely a matchup that he exploits. TJ Hawkinson has been ridiculously volatile the past couple of weeks. I do think against Atlanta, it should be a relatively pass-happy script for the Vikings, and I do think he scores a touchdown in this game. Evan Ingram is playing against Tennessee this week. Trevor Lawrence was placed on IR, so he has Mac Jones the rest of the season. I actually think that's good for Evan Ingram because I think Mac Jones is going to look for his security blanket quite a bit more than Trevor did, even though Trevor likes and heavily targets him as well. And so I do think he sees quite a bit of volume in this game, but I'm not projecting a touchdown. David Njoku is coming off a 2-touchdown week this past week, and in the previous matchup with Pittsburgh, he dropped a touchdown. I do think he scores a touchdown in this game, extending his streak to 2, and I think he's a solid mid-tight end 1 this week. And now we have the elite tight end 1s that I think will probably be top 5 options this week. You have Kelce, Kittle, Jonnu, McBride, and Bowers. So Travis Kelce has been relatively consistent. He's seeing heavy volume again with Rashee Rice out. I think against the Chargers, even though they do allow the 9th fewest points to tight ends in fantasy, that he's an absolute must start, and I do think he scores a touchdown. George Kittle had been the most consistent tight end in fantasy. He had posted a top 12 finish in every single week until this past week. It was quite bizarre. I do think the weather absolutely played a factor there. Chicago is around middle of the pack in terms of allowing tight end production, but it's George Kittle. You're never sitting him, and I do think he has a decent day, but no touchdown. Jonnu Smith has, the past 3 weeks at least, become the focal point of the short passing game for the Dolphins. Until we see that discontinue, he's going to remain a top 5 tight end. He's getting a ridiculous amount of volume, and he is playing really well recently. While he is playing against the Jets, who do allow the 4th fewest points to tight ends, if he continues getting these 10-plus target games, he is an absolute top 5 lock every single week. Just like with Jonnu Smith, Trey McBride the past 2 weeks has seen a ludicrous amount of volume. Instead of running the ball because it's been ineffective, they've just dumped it off to him repeatedly. As an owner, I've been incredibly happy with what they've chosen to do. He played Seattle and destroyed them 2 weeks ago. I see no reason for that to discontinue, and especially since they're really featuring him heavily. And now we have Brock Bowers. Most weeks he's going to be the tight end 1. He's, in my opinion, the most talented tight end in the NFL already. I made a video a couple weeks back about him. It's a matchup against Tampa Bay. I think he's going to absolutely crush them in this game, and I do think he scores a touchdown. In conclusion, tight ends that I think are low-end tight end 2s, you have Gesicki, Conklin, and Pitts. Tight ends that I think are in that mid to low-end tight end 2 range, you have Fant, Knox, Sanders, Kmet, and Freiermuth. Tight ends that I think are mid to high-end tight end 2s, you have Calcaterra, Gray, Disley, and Laporta. Tight ends that I think are mid to low-end tight end 1s that are probably less likely to be the tight end 1 this week. You have Kraft, Johnson, Otton, Schoonmaker, Hawkinson, Ingram, and Njoku. And then tight ends that I think are mid to elite tight end 1s with a realistic shot at being the tight end 1 this week. You have Kelce, Kittle, Jonnu, McBride, and Bowers. All right, you know the drill. Who do I have too high? Who do I have too low? Let me know below in the comment section and let me know why. And make sure you check out my quarterback, running back, and wide receiver rankings videos as they come out. Today being Friday, tight ends and quarterbacks are coming out, and on Saturday being tomorrow, running backs and wide receivers are coming out. Thanks.